Now, there's all this craze about learning how to code, but what the major information which is not informed to you is that there are different kind of programming languages and there are different areas of software development. Software development or programming or software engineering means the same thing. So when a lot of boot camps or courses are saying, hey, learn how to code, become job ready, they're actually not telling you upfront what area of development you're going to be led into. They may be telling that to you, but if you have a clear picture that there are actually 9 main areas of software development, you will be able to make an informed decision on which path you want to take. So in this video, I'm going to share with you the 9 areas, which ones are more popular, which ones are not, and which one is a better, more successful, more profitable career, more promising career, I should say, for you, for other people out there. So let's get started. So the first area of development is actually a language or compiler developer. So these kind of developers are like linguists of the programming world. They actually build programming languages. They work with low-level programming languages and machine languages to build newer programming languages. So these account for about 1% of developers. Only 1% of developers actually create programming languages. Now, the next type is actually called embedded systems developer. They account for about 3% of developers. So embedded system developers program or write code that actually run on hardware. So imagine your car or your fridge or your washing machine or electronic toys. They have some kind of code on them. That's why when you actually click a button, something happens. The fridge knows how to regulate the temperature. Your car knows how to turn on, turn off, accelerate, decelerate, the car stereo, electronics. All of this is programmed, and the embedded system developer actually codes that program to tell the machine what needs to be done. And by the way, just a side topic, a developer is somebody who actually writes code to talk to a computer, tell the computer what to do. So there are different kinds of developers who actually tell different kinds of computers on what to do. Language and compiler developers actually create programming languages. Embedded systems developer, as I told you right now, code on these particular hardware. Next in line is operating system developers. These are actually developers who actually write the operating system software. So let's say a Windows developer, Android, the people who actually made Android, Mac OS, Linux, Unix, these are the developers who actually made these operating systems and continue to improve them. Then there are data scientists. There's all this craze about data science, artificial intelligence, and all of this, right? They account for about 7% of developers. So now you may be imagining or thinking, what does a data scientist do? What kind of programs do they write? So actually, data scientists are more like mathematicians and statisticians that actually code. So a data scientist does not code a software per se in the typical sense. They actually write program, they actually write code that actually work on mathematical and statistical models to predict or forecast what's going to happen. So let's say a typical data scientist will actually be given a lot of data, so maybe a lot of words or maybe a lot of stats or a lot of pricing information, whatever the company is doing. They're going to be given a lot of data and they will actually write this mathematical and statistical model that's going to forecast what that information means or could happen. So that's what they're doing. They're actually not creating user interfaces or typical softwares in the typical sense. Then there are video game developers. These are developers who actually write the video games that we play on our console or on our computer. They account for about 8% of developers. Then we have DevOps developers. Now that's a new term these days. So DevOps stands for Development and Operations Engineers. So they used to be actually called system administrators previously. So DevOps' job is to manage and maintain computer infrastructure and servers of a company. So DevOps do not actually make software in the typical sense. They actually don't make mobile apps or web apps or those kind of things. They actually write code to manage and automate the servers that they are working on. So those are DevOps. Then we have desktop developers. So these are developers who actually make desktop applications like your Microsoft Excel, Adobe Photoshop, Paint, Safari browser, and other desktop applications are built by such developers. They may specialize in a particular operating system. So they may specialize in a Linux desktop application or Windows desktop application, Mac desktop application, or all of them. So depends on their expertise, but desktop application developers will make a desktop application. Then we have mobile apps developers. These are 20% of developers. So mobile apps developers, of course, will make your banking application, your workout application for your phone, or a map application, and other applications that we enjoy on our Android devices or on our iOS devices, right? So these developers may specialize in one or other or both of these platforms. So maybe an Android, iOS, or both, right? Now, the last piece and the biggest piece is actually web app developers. So these are the people who actually code your Facebook.coms or your Google.com or your Amazon.com or your Netflix.com. Any of these .coms or .nets or .orgs, I love coding.org, will be created by the web app developer. Now, previously, these kind of developers were only called web app developers or web developers. But nowadays, since the world is enhancing and progressing in development, the web application development has been broken down into two parts. So one part is actually called the front-end developer, and the other part is actually called a back-end developer. So the difference in a back-end application or a front-end application or a front-end developer and a back-end developer is actually a front-end application developer would actually make the user interface of a website. So let's say if you were working for, Facebook.com or Google.com, let's just go with Google. So a Google front-end developer would actually make the look and feel of the entire website and also the functionality and the features of the website. So for instance, let's say when you start typing inside Google, it automatically shows you suggestions, right? So that kind of feature will be created by a front-end developer, right? So the user interface is actually called the front end. So a front-end developer would create that. Now, the job of the back-end developer, on the other hand, would be, let's say, when you are actually typing in some information on Google, let's say, that information is actually sent to the back-end system that the user doesn't see. But that is the layer, that's the application which actually powers the information to the front end. So let's say when you Google something, the information is actually stored. Your search results are actually stored in the Google database. So the information from the front end, whatever the user does, is sent to the back end. The back end actually says, oh, the user searched for this information. I'm going to go look in the database and then give the result to the user. So the back end developer would actually work with the data, find the information, process the information, make sure that information is secure, and then pass that information to the front end so the user can see. So the front end application will actually show the user interface. The back end application will manage the data and security of the data. So both of these parts together actually make a web application. And now the new word for this is people who actually know both of these things are actually called full stack developer. Front end plus back end is actually a full stack developer. Previously, 5 years ago, these words were not existent. They were actually just called web developers. But these are the new specialties, let's call it, which have been introduced. So these are the 9 types of software developers. Now, a natural question that you may have is, okay, there are 9 areas. Which one should I become? Which one is the most profitable, most promising for my future? So let's answer that question in the next video, but at least you have this big picture on the 9 main areas and which are the areas where most of the development happens. So 35% of development happens in the web, 20% in mobile, 12% in desktop, 11% in DevOps, and so forth. So that's pretty much it for this video. I'm going to talk to you in the next lesson.